Thank you all for joining us today for our Pit to Port video session. My name is Lacey Tucker, and I'm Chevron's Renewable Execution Manager. My primary focus is Chevron's midterm strategies for renewable fuel solutions. I'll be your moderator today, and we've got an exciting agenda planned. The transportation and heavy industrial segments are currently under pressure to lower Scope 1, 2, and 3 greenhouse gas emissions. This challenge extends beyond on-road trucking and encompasses the entire supply chain, from mining to marine transport and everything in between. Given the diverse requirements of these industries, devising a comprehensive solution can be challenging, yet a very interesting endeavor. To shed some light on how companies can address these challenges, we're talking to Emerging Markets Sector Manager Rajni Modiani, who currently focuses on our rail and mining sectors.
Thanks, Lacey, for bringing us together for this discussion. Hello, everyone. I'm Rajni Modiani. I have about 15 years of experience working with heavy industrial segments like rail, mining, and marine. I'm part of Chevron Renewable Energy Group's emerging markets segment, where I work with our rail and mining customers to chart out their low carbon journeys with a balanced approach.
Awesome. And to provide the fleet perspective of the value chain, we also have with us Jerome McCarville, National Accounts Sales Manager.
Hello. I'm Jerome McCarville. I'm National Accounts Sales Manager. I manage our relationships with our downstream or end user accounts. These include large trucking companies. I have about 35 years experience in the industry. Started out after college with about 8 years of national fleet operations and fuel experience. Spent about 25 years or so after that in the retail truck stop space, and then the last 7 years with in the renewable fuels division here at Chevron Renewable Energy Group.
Awesome. So today our focus is on discussing a wide range of applications under the concept of the pit-to-port value chain. We will explore lower carbon intensity fuel solutions that cater to the requirements of companies operating in this value chain, from mining to marine transport and everything in between. Rajni, can you tell us more about pit-to-port?
Yeah, so a pit-to-port refers to the journey of getting precious metals and other raw materials out of the ground and ultimately to manufacturers that create the products we use in everyday life. Is meant to bring to light the connection between the various equipments like the mining haul trucks, rail, on-road fleets, and marine transportation industries in one value chain that is ultimately responsible for bringing these products to market. When companies operating in these value chains are making purchasing decisions, they're doing so by recognizing the impact on the entire value chain. And the same reasoning plays a role when considering ways to lower their carbon intensity for their operations, which is why we think of things in terms of pit-to-port.
Interesting. So to that end, what is the importance and need for companies to reduce their carbon intensity?
Yeah, so the transportation industry overall is the largest source of GHG emissions in the U.S., and shippers and carriers will need to be able to demonstrate their carbon intensity reduction efforts. This need is driven by a combination of regulatory policies in the form of incentives and taxes, as well as shareholder and customer pressures to increasingly reduce carbon emissions over time. When you think about all the energy that's being used collectively, the opportunity to make an impact on streamlined operations while reducing carbon intensity is exciting. One important focus is ensuring that energy availability and cost is balanced with the impact of the solutions.
I know there's still skepticism around creating lower carbon intensity solutions in the immediate future, especially when we think about the harder to abate sectors. Why do you think it's important and even beneficial to get started now?
Yeah, so first of all, as Jerome mentioned, there's tremendous pressure to start working on really reducing carbon intensity in Scope 1, 2, and 3 emissions from all sides. So for instance, let's think about the regulatory and market pressures. If we start thinking about the mining industry, MSHA, or the Mine Safety and Health Administration, has for the longest time placed limitations on diesel particulate matter emissions. In addition, if you think of the National Mining Association, it has also committed to the Paris Climate Agreement. If you look from mining to now marine industry, legislation that was passed in 2023 by IMO, or International Maritime Organization, is driving significant carbon reduction efforts in ocean-going vessels. Similarly, if we think of the freight rail industry, FRA, or the Federal Railroad Administration in 2022 introduced the Industry Climate Challenge, encouraging owners and operators to reach net zero by 2050. So if you think from a market standpoint, there's tremendous pressure. But even when you think of the operators, for example, the Class 1 railroads in North America, they have established and in fact are already working towards their mid and long-term targets for greenhouse gas emissions reductions.
Yes, and along those lines, for fleets, one of the most recent regulations is the Advanced Clean Fleets Regulation in California, which is part of the state's strategy to reduce tailpipe emissions. Due to the competitive pressures, an increasing number of transportation companies are beginning to lower their carbon journey. And there's evidence that consumers may start to choose products that can help minimize their own carbon intensity. Fleets like Amazon, Walmart, PepsiCo, and FedEx have established aggressive corporate lower carbon targets. Additionally, in the marketplace, shareholder groups, including investors, customers, employees, and communities, are driving voluntary emissions targets. So when you think of all these drivers, it is important that we work on reducing carbon intensity now.
You know, there's been a ton of conversation about how the adoption of biofuels can have an immediate and effective impact on reducing carbon emissions. Can you explain what makes biofuels a good alternative solution for some companies?
Yeah, let me take a stab at that. So it's interesting that you noted this, Lisi, and biofuels are beginning to be implemented now. And yet you don't really hear as much as you should about them. So I love this opportunity to dig a little deeper in it. One of the biggest advantages of biofuels is that they can be implemented today, typically within existing equipment and infrastructure. It has no impact on operations and actually can create efficiencies and minimize any incremental cost. So for example, just one portion of it is biofuels can be used in existing diesel tanks. And since mining and large fleets in particular use large quantities of fuel, what's kept in the storage tanks turns over quickly. Jerome, I don't know if you have more to add to that.
Yeah, so plus biofuels are not only a drop-in solution, which means fleets usually don't have to upgrade or modify their engines or trucks to use biofuels. They can also help improve overall engine performance. For example, biodiesel can improve lubricity, which helps protect against wear and tear, and can even help reduce long-term maintenance costs. Moreover, more complete combustion with biofuels leads to lower unburned hydrocarbons and particulate matter, or soot, which leads to less frequent maintenance with some of the emissions control systems like diesel particulate filters, or DPFs.
Interesting. So you kind of brought up some cost questions. So saving costs, I mean, of course, is top of mind, and saving costs and infrastructure is great. But how do biofuels compare cost-wise overall to other lower carbon energy solutions? There's also a bottom line that we certainly have to keep in mind.
Yeah, so let me actually share an example to address that question, DC. A recent Freight Wave survey and white paper reported that cost is the most important factor for companies looking to reduce carbon intensity at scale. So we know it is an important consideration. Let me provide an underground mining example where use of biofuels provides an opportunity to reduce current and future operating expense. Underground mines incur a substantial cost in ventilating the mine site, and biofuels that are known to reduce particulate matter emissions have an opportunity to really reduce those ventilation costs. So in this particular example, by incorporating biofuels, you can lower your particulate emissions, reduce carbon intensity of operations, but also reduce ventilation costs due to the lower PM emissions.
Yeah, and it's also key to note that biofuels can offer one of the most cost-effective solutions to lower carbon intensity emissions, in turn providing potentially improved operations for carriers. Another noteworthy observation to share here is according to the published Deloitte analysis, research has shown a correlation between shipping companies with a higher ESG or environmental, social, and governance rating having higher profitability over a period of 5 to 7 years compared to those with lower ESG rating.
So, all of the sectors within transportation and heavy industrial segments need to reduce their carbon intensity, and all have access to roughly the same kinds of lower carbon intensity solutions. You mentioned earlier there's a connection between all sectors in the pit to port value chain. Can you explain further how they're all connected?
So we believe in bringing solutions to our customers that they can implement seamlessly in their operations. Our relationship with our customers is very important to us and something we value dearly. It is not just about selling a product to them, but it's actually about identifying the most suitable solution from our portfolio that would meet the customer's evolving needs. So, to be an effective partner to our customers, we make sure that we look and understand their entire value chain and think about how all these various segments interact to determine the best solution. And I have an infographic that we can look at to help understand that further. As you look at this infographic, this perspective illustrates the synergy within a value chain. Where seemingly autonomous industries are in fact an integral part of the value chain and to the delivery of products to businesses and consumers. Essentially, to help drive the most efficient operations and outcome, one important consideration is to ensure that a decision that is made for one portion of an operation or equipment will not disrupt and in fact work seamlessly across the value chain. Being able to use a single solution like biofuels can help significantly streamline planning and logistics and increase operational efficiency. In this infographic, we can see the interconnectedness between various activities in the value chain. The fuel truck in this infographic brings biofuels to the mine storage tanks. From the same tanks, the fuel is typically used to fuel the mining equipment that is excavating the raw materials out of the ground and then moves that material around the mine site. That fuel is also used to fuel the generator sets that drives other equipments and processing plants in the mine site. That fuel is then used to power the trains and the marine vessels that take the material excavated to the port and from the port to wherever the next destination is. So in all, when we think of what is the customer's job and what is the mission they are taking and understand the interconnectedness, that's when we can really evaluate, looking across our portfolio, what solution would make the most sense and why.
That's really a great way to think about our customers' needs and their value chains, and also reflects Chevron's customer first mindset. So, Jerome, with this value chain, can you share with us an example of how you would evaluate fit for solutions for the customer needs?
So let's just think about all these segments that we see in the pit to port graphic. Long haul transportation, to generators, to processing plants, to locomotives, to marine vessels, and ultimately to the over-the-road trucks that bring the goods across the last mile. Take a holistic approach to lowering carbon intensity by evaluating solutions based on 4 criteria: technology readiness, operational impact, economic viability, and fuel availability. Chevron offers several lower carbon solutions, and our customer-centric teams collaborate and partner with our customers to identify what we think are the best solutions that checks all these criteria. Keeping in mind the more aggressive goals may require multiple solutions. So effectively considering technology, infrastructure, seamless operational integration, and cost, biofuels provide potentially one of the best solutions ready for implementation for these segments. This infographic helps illustrate how a lower carbon intensity solution like biofuels could be implemented at scale and typically without changes to the infrastructure across this value chain.
Yeah, indeed, that's a really helpful graphic. And so if you guys are up for it, I'd like to pivot us to how companies across these sectors are looking for insights on how biofuels are impacting the marketplace today. We've gathered questions from each of the verticals included in the pit to port and have several questions rapid fire for all of you. So to kick us off, our first question. I thought B5 blends were the norm for heavy-duty applications, particularly for mining. How common are B20 or even higher blends in harder-to-abate sectors?
Yeah, it is very common to see 100% renewable diesel and biodiesel blends of up to B20 in heavy duty applications like rail and mining. Biodiesel blended at higher levels, even B80, for example, have been commonplace in underground mining sector for nearly 20 years. Several North American rail and global mining companies have undertaken and completed extensive testing with biofuels globally, including B20 blend levels. As an example, we have some North American railroads like Class 1 railroads, for example, Union Pacific and Canadian National, that have also participated in testing like this. So B20 is becoming very commonplace. We've even seen higher blends than that at various times, depending on the technology at play.
And also, as an example, I'd like to add over-the-road freight companies like J.B. Hunt and Ruan Transport have widely adopted blends like R80 B20 into their operations successfully. And B20 has widely been used in multiple large states for many years, and even required in the case of Minnesota. Other states with extensive historical B20 use include Texas, Illinois, Iowa, Oregon, and California.
So, to what extent are fleet owners and operators using biodiesel and renewable diesel today at scale?
Almost all the OEMs explicitly support the use of 100% renewable diesel, or RD100, and biodiesel blends up to B20 in their engines today. As an example, OEM Cummins has already approached or approved blends up to B20 for their entire on-road engine lineup, past and present. Based on growing engine manufacturer support and national and local incentives, we see varying blends of biodiesel and renewable diesel being used by fleet owners and operators.
Interesting. So, are people really using B100? I mean, does that impact warranties from OEMs?
So B100 can help fleets meet their lower carbon intensity targets and mandates, and in most situations, without compromising their operations or uptime. We have provided large volumes of B100 over multiple years to customers that have national fleets, so B100 can be considered to have been deployed at scale. One technology company we have partnered with is called Optimus Technologies, and they are targeting to deploy an additional 1,000 Class 8 trucks operating on B100 blends by the end of this year.
Wow, that's amazing. So, shifting gears a little bit here, how viable do we think electrification is for lowering the carbon intensity of harder to abate sectors?
Yeah, let me talk about that, Lucy, in context of the heavy industrial segment. So, if you think of these segments like freight rail and mining, implementing electrification or battery type solutions is difficult due to several reasons. So, the very first reason is think of the high power and high energy technology that will be needed and is not necessarily available at scale for these applications. If you think about the charging infrastructure and technology, that will require tremendous capital investments. And then overall, implementing the solution today will be cost prohibitive. So many large industrial companies are realizing that electrification is not going to be a viable solution for them in the near future. And further, compared to electric, biodiesel is available today and could be up to 56% more effective at reducing carbon intensity when you take into account the power grid. And that's all of the reason you need to think of a solution available today and implement it while you keep watching the landscape of different lower carbon solutions evolve.
Interesting. That's an interesting way to think about it. So, how will switching to biofuels impact engine performance?
So actually, biodiesel offers some engine performance benefits, including improved lubricity and combustion, which can reduce DPF regenerations when compared to petroleum diesel.
So biofuels sound great in theory. However, I understand them to be more expensive than using conventional diesel fuel. What current solutions could be less expensive or help address cost concerns?
There are more state and federal incentives now than ever before. The long-term cost benefits of biofuel may be lower than traditional diesel due to avoiding infrastructure changes when compared to making the switch to electrification, potential loss of revenue with continued use of petroleum diesel due to higher emissions as customers move toward other providers using lower carbon intensity offerings. For example, some shippers are requiring ESG details of carriers when taking bids for transportation contracts, meaning that if your company can't demonstrate substantial progress toward lower carbon targets, you may risk losing out on potential business. A more favorable ESG rating can be attractive to a customer base that is taking an increased interest in reduced carbon emissions.
So, how available are biofuels really? Like, will remote job sites be able to access fuels as easily as, say, more populated areas?
As of this recording, more than 1,200 stations have begun offering biodiesel and 600 stations have begun offering renewable diesel since 2020. Biodiesel and renewable diesel are one of the most accessible lower carbon intensity solutions available in the market today. These supply chains for these fuels are starting to mimic that of petroleum diesel, and we will continue to see growth.
Interesting. So, pretty important. Shifting gears again here, what's your thoughts on the current progress on getting these solutions to market for rail customers?
Yeah, so lower carbon intensity solution for rail industry have been demonstrated and are being utilized by the key Class 1 railroads in North America. They have successfully deployed biodiesel, renewable diesel, and the blends of two in their operations. And in fact, Chevron has partnered with Union Pacific and Canadian National Railways to implement these low carbon intensity solutions in their operations today. And since these solutions can work across industries, these findings from the rail sector can be applied to other parallel sectors like mining.
So, what about marine? So, when we think about the recent International Maritime Organization, or IMO's legislation, it's driving a lot of the marine market's interest in lower carbon intensity solutions. Is there anything out in the marketplace yet?
Yeah, and if we can look toward the cruise industry for some real world applications, one of our cruise line customers actively used a few million gallons of renewable diesel in 2023, and they're expanding its use in 2024. They have, in fact, seen significant reductions in their carbon intensity from that switch and without any impact to their operations. And if you look at IMO 8217 specifications, they now include biodiesel up to B100 or 100%.
Oh, wow. Well, that was super informative, and I think that's all the time we have for today. So, to our viewers, do you still have an unanswered question? You can direct your questions to regi.com/pit-to-port. And of course, thank you to Rajni and Jerome. Do you have any final takeaways for us?
Yeah, first of all, thank you, Lisi, for driving this conversation, and thank you to our viewers for taking the time to listen to our discussion here. A primary takeaway is for us to really continue to think of Pit-to-Port as one integrated value chain of various segments. Those of us at Chevron certainly look at it that way and look at the interconnectedness of the supply chain. And we believe there is so much more opportunity to make an impact, to really partner with our customers when you look at the big picture and understand their missions instead of separate segments.
Yeah, and what's really exciting is that our solutions can work across the entire spectrum, meaning that if our customers choose to go with biofuels, they can leverage it in all their operations rather than finding solutions for individual checkpoints.
Well, wonderful. Thank you both. For more information, please visit us at regi.com. And to stay up to date on all things Pit-to-Port, follow us on LinkedIn and sign up for our newsletter. Thanks again, everybody.